into these cup bucket seats. You haven't got any massage or anything, but you got cool seats. If you need that, that's good because it's hot today. Let's fire it up. Nice. I always like to turn on the exhaust note as I step in because that's something about this car. You should have that on every time because it feels throughout its chassis, its muscular chassis, and its muscular shapes and bodywork of how all that power almost rumbles and shakes it a little, even though it's very civilized. You can rev it a little, standing still, and it sounds good. So let's start off in comfort mode. And as always, like the gear shifting stalk up here. But even though it's got the rear axle steering, I don't think it turns around that very quick and fast. It's okay, but it's not very effective. But it's effective on the road. It sure is. Puttering away like this, having standed outside, looking at the car that is among my 5 top favorite cars ever, the AMG GT. The SLR McLaren, when that came, I was just, that was a poster car for me, a dream car. I just liked that it had elegance and it had so much sport and race heritage. Everything was cramped into that car and it looked more beautiful than anything I've ever seen. So that grabbed a hold of me a little more, a little extra by the Mercedes brand. And then came the SLS. And that was also, of course, very, very hardcore, cool, but still with that touch of elegance once again that Mercedes always keep intact to this very day. But after that got retired, they needed to keep up and produce another big Grand Tourer, a big coupe. And that's when the AMG GT popped up. And once again, I just thought that was one of the most beautiful cars. And it felt so pumped up. It had such a great stance from every angle. It just showed off its muscles and with its own personal attitude that just oozed of strength, grand touring, and a lot of sportiness. And now this new one looks about the same, but it has a bit more smooth lines. And I just think they've accomplished it even better. They haven't changed it. It's like they've just kept the same essence of design with this one. If you look at the SL, well, that has changed rather dramatically throughout its design language. The SL 63 AMG, which we drove last year, well, that was brilliant as well. And it feels almost the same because it is almost the same car. But this one feels like the Grand Tourer it should be. Hard, cool roof, low profile, and just something to my eyes that I can walk around for several minutes and just observe because I just think it looks so good. And you can see that people all around, when they hear the sound, when they see it, well, their eyes are stuck on it because it has such graceful lines. And when on the move, it is just a piece of art. So I'm very colored. I'm very taken by this car. I've always been. And I think that this one, it just keeps that great design that it should have. It's got that long bonnet, this cockpit that almost feels like you're sitting on the back of it, short overhangs, big tires, big grille, and something that you just want to get into, feel, drive, and just enjoy. You can enjoy it in slow paces, and you can enjoy it at higher paces, of course. And this is the second strongest in the lineup. There is also a plug-in hybrid, which provides over 800 horsepower and over 1,000 Nm of torque. But this one, well, it's enough. 585 horsepower from that 4-liter V8 engine, 800 Nm of torque, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.2 seconds, and 315 kilometers an hour for top speed. So just a missile. And a missile is almost what it looks like. And that's what's so great about it, because it feels like you're driving a big boat. When you look over the bonnet, it feels like it never ends. It is so long, and you can feel those big bulges on the bonnet, and it just makes you feel strong. And it is something very special, just pointing it in, feeling that big nose changing direction. And you can't get away from the fact that this is a Mercedes coupé when it's at its very, very best. In here, it's so cozy. You feel cocooned. The window is rather short, and it feels like you're sitting in some sort of jet fighter. You have that little roof there with glass, and these bucket seats, well, they are sporty enough. And sure, they are a little hard in their sides and the bolsters here, but it's not that bad. And I've said that a lot lately about the bucket seats in many cars, even in Porsches, which are very hard and very sporty, and which are supposed to save weight, carbon fiber and everything. They have very good stuffing. So it feels like they really thought about, you know, people are gonna take this for a long ride. Let's make it comfortable and not just sporty when you are flying from side to side on curvy roads on the racetrack. But now we're driving in comfort mode, and I have all the settings in comfort, basic. You know, the leanest setting there is. But this chassis is still very hard. I thought it was hard in the SL, but I think that this is just as hard. This should be a bit smoother because that one weighs a little more. This weighs a little under 1900 kilos, so that's okay due to it's got 4MATIC Plus, but still, they said that it should be a bit more soft, a little more comfortable, but I don't really feel that. Driving on smooth road, well, it is super civilized. It's quiet, the cabin is well stuffed, as in all Mercedes cars, but every time you get to some more torn up road or a little thresh that you drive over or some railroad tracks, even though you drive fairly slow over them, it hits back enormously. And I find that rather uncomforting. I don't like that at all because I think in the most comfort setting, it should take it a bit better. Now we got big rims on this one and low profile tires. Sure, it's hard, and I like hard cars when it's supposed to be driven hard. But when driving in comfort, and this car should deliver both of that, it feels like it's a little too harsh. But set that aside and look at the cockpit. You sit low and it almost feels like the dashboard is bulging out over you. You also get into a perfect position. This big, strong AMG steering wheel with these sensitive touches to change everything as we've seen before. Works all right. So easy to maneuver, a lot of buttons in the beginning if you're new to it. And you can set everything on these two buttons down here. So comfort, sport, sport plus, and then you get into track. So a lot to set. And you got individual to set your own sort of configuration. If you want to manually adjust the rear wing, you also got a front wing or a front lip that lets the air pass a little better when driving really, really hard, because this one is created and set out to be driven hard on track. And then you got carbon fiber, Burmeister, and of course there's no cheap plastics here really. A little flimsy, a little plastic feeling in the ventilation outlets, those turbine looking, and of course a little glossy plastic here. Otherwise, it looks good. This looks good. There's nothing that obstructs your vision out, and you sit low. You sit real low. So you become as strong as the car when you get into the more active, sporty feeling of driving. And in this one, we got the 2+2 seats. That's a lot better. The extra weight for these, well, compared to when not having any seats at all back there and just being a two-seater, that is not much of a difference, and you won't notice that. And that makes it practical because it is. It's got 321 liters of boot capacity, which is okay, but you can fold these seats, which you can if you haven't got these. And then suddenly it becomes 675 liters of boot capacity. I mean, you can stuff a lot of things in there. And Mercedes got feedback from previous owners of the earlier one that said that we want it to be a bit more day-to-day friendly and a little easier to live with. I thought that was a very good car, but trying it out for a week, well, it's not like living with it for a long time. So maybe the customers have a bit more to say about that. And Mercedes listened to that and made it a bit more friendly in that way. But they didn't make it much more friendly in the comfort mode. in the chassis. But this 4MATIC, well, it's mostly when it's a lot more slippery outside, or when that extra power needs to be at the front wheels that it's provided. Otherwise, it's almost rear wheel driven. The early one, well, that was rear wheel drive. And that's the thing about that one. It was such a drifter, such a fun car. But at the same time, it had such a good grip. So it was a real good competitor to the 911. But if you compare this one to a new 911, well, they're not the same. This one feels a bit more relaxed at the same time that it has all this power. But you can, if you want, push this one. That power is monumental. This 9-speed shift gearbox, it's super quick. It hasn't got very delicate feel in the paddle shifters, but it's direct and it's quick. It would be nice if it could click a bit more, and instead of that more plastic clicking sound. But I don't mind. They're big enough, they're good to hold, and this steering wheel is just amazing to grip. You have such a firm grip around it, so easy to cross your arms with it. I like the system in here. It works just so great. It's such a quick process now. The graphics are good, the symbols are big, and we know that from before. Getting into the AMG, well, here you can customize and set them in different modes. You got, oh, I also forgot that you got a slippery mode in the wintertime. So a lot to set there, and also the navigation is just great. Great graphics, very quick when you zoom in and out. Now it's just a cozy cabin in here. A lot of carbon fiber, of course, good storage, induction charger, and everything you need. But it's still very track focused. And I also like these shades here that you got, so the sun doesn't reflect and you get blinded. This one has also become bigger than its predecessor, longer, wider, and a little higher. This 585 horsepower. Such a speed monster, this one. But when driving in track mode, well, it's just sucked to the ground. But I don't need to raise my voice while driving this quick. And that is something very special in a car like this. Even though you get that big bark and you drive at crazy speeds, it's still very sophisticated in here. So you drive hard with a lot of sophistication and comfort when it's smooth. And the thing about this active ride control, which hydraulically works, so the different weight of the car in different corners and when you get to some uneven surfaces are supposed to make it a little sweeter, a little more soft. Well, it's on the sporty side. It hasn't made it any softer. It's just sporty. But when it's smooth, once again, then the ride is just smooth, even though you really, really push it. The very best way to get your personal driving profile set is to swap through these different drive modes, setting the traction control in different steps, the chassis in different steps, because flicking through all of these modes, that alters the all-wheel drive torque, the intensity of the rear axle steering, the torque vectoring, and the anti-roll characteristics of the car. But when you find a smooth road, well, set it into track and just go for it. Just go for it. Because that's where this car really shows what type of car it is, and it needs to be in that mode if you want to be a real hardcore competitor to the 911. Even though this maybe hasn't been set out to beat that one, I think it's not far off. I think that the steering, it really has its great inputs when actively driving in, together with the rear wheel steering. That is just phenomenal. It's like you need, as always, get into the character of it, of how quick it changes direction. And with the weight that it carries, well, it needs it. Of course, you got race start. Don't really hear that bark that much. It's like it's coming more from speakers maybe than from the exhaust, even though from the outside it sounds just magnificent. But it's a lot quieter in some way. Driving with the SL, well, you get all that wind and everything, and the ferocity of it is a little different, which I like. So very much more lean towards a Grand Tour, as it should be. But that's quick, of course. 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds. That is mighty quick. And that's where the 4MATIC really does its brilliant job of putting all that power down. And it's also got active aero together with that front lip and the rear spoiler. Well, it gets pushed a bit better down to the ground. You stand still and you pull both of these paddles and then you just confirm. And then you got drift mode. And it's so controlled when drifting. So you can just push this one because it feels like you're sitting on the rear axle. So it's just a long nose, knowing where to have it. It's like a real slingshot. It just gracefully goes the way that you want. Going at high speed into corners, well, you do that with ease. Brakes, they are good. Not ceramics on these ones, steel brakes, but still very good. 14.1 liters combined per 100 kilometers. Well, that's thirsty. And it will become a lot thirstier when you wanna drive it a little faster. But it feels so undramatic in some way. And I just like its behavior. It's so mature that it's not like, this is not a cheeky car. This is a performance cruiser. It is a little too much on the quiet side. Like to have it bark a little bit more. Feels like it's been muffled a bit more. Of course, it's a power package. Of course it is. But it doesn't make me feel thrilled in some way. It's relaxed. It's so sophisticated. And it's predictable. And it's pointy. And I just love it the way it is in its cruising mode. If they could just do it a little more soft in the comfort mode, then it would just be splendid. Maybe some more rubber on the tires, a little smaller rims would do it. This V8, you want that. Of course, you can get that more powerful one, the SE version, that plug-in version. You need to try that one out as well, because I think that ferocity in that one, maybe that comes alive a little more. So hopefully it will come a GTC, a convertible, a roadster of this one. Then I think it will pop a little bit more in the thrilling department, because it needs to. This one, a little too civilized. And of course, it's not a cheap car. This one cost 2,354,800 Swedish crowns, and it's got extra equipment for 304,000 Swedish crowns. So the starting price for this 63 AMG is 2,050,000 Swedish crowns. You can settle for the AMG GT 43, you know, not that much power, but a great cruiser. Opt for, you know, not that big tires, a little more rubber on them, smaller rims, and maybe it will be a bit more comfortable in the comfort mode. Just letting it growl around like this in cruising style. That's where it is at its best. At higher speeds, at smooth roads. Something special about it. But it's something special about it showing up, because so many people are just wowed about it, about its look, its greatness, and that big grille and that big emblem in the front. It says a lot. It says a lot about the status. And this one, it really shows what Mercedes status is about. Well, catching eyes, catching attention. This is more fun to pop up in and to stand talking to someone who is interested, or someone who might not be interested. But that's what you pay for. That's what you get. And that's just what I love about this car.